And we're going to be talking about accelerated learning tips. Because there's so much to learn, it seems, in Nashville when you come to sales school. How many of you were a bit daunted by the thickness of the manual and all the sales presentations? Yeah, I was recruited about a week or so before we left. So during finals, I heard about this summer work opportunity. So when I got in the car and they handed me all the sales talks and they said, oh yeah, here's a Selling 101 manual, I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta know this? Yes. So what we thought we'd do is kind of build in some ideas on how you can memorize faster. I'm gonna give you an overview of sales school, so this will go really well for you. Does that sound good? And you guys don't need the managers here to be enthusiastic, do you? You can. Okay, thank you. So that will help. The alternate title to this is How to Absorb Mass Quantities of Material Rapidly. And we'll do some fill in the blank as we go along. So page 32. Let's do the first blank of sales school. Woohoo! Right. Very good. To do well in any course that you take, you have to be in the right mental state. And I'm going to use the word state a lot this week. So the state that I'll request that you be in is one of calm focus. That's what goes in the blanks. You want to be calm, kind of relaxed, but you also want to be focused on the material. How many of you have tried to study for an exam in a state of high anxiety? Because the time was ticking down. Like, I got 4 more hours before the test. Your brain doesn't absorb it really well if you're in the wrong place mentally. So we want you to be calm. We want you to be focused. We want you to believe that you can learn the material. And by Thursday night, I'm pretty sure you're going to feel pretty ready. Maybe not 100%, but enough to go out and do this. So believe you can learn it. Third blank, visualize successful learning. Picture yourself getting the material down. Okay? So we're going to talk a lot this week about visualization. Has anybody done that when they were doing sports? Did some mind gymnastics? Good. That will help you. Also, this week we want you to kind of enjoy the process, relax and enjoy the process, so we're going to try to make sales school fun. Is that okay? Yeah. This won't be like a gigantic, huge lecture where you're all falling asleep in the back. We want you to be engaged. We're going to try to make it engaging. So, here we go. Let me tell you about the big picture, what this week will be like. It always helps to have an overview of the course before you actually take the course. Now, how many of you, when you were younger, built one of those, like on a rainy day, one of those big 2,000-piece jigsaw puzzles? Have you ever done one of those? Yeah? So I have a visual representation. Yeah, there we go. Clip art. That is from the 80s. All right. What you'll find is that each day that you're working on this material, like paragraphs will start fitting together. And I promise by the end of the week, things will all come together. Now, when you first build a jigsaw, what's the first thing you do after you dump out the box? Okay, you work on the borders. Last week, the group wasn't quite as sharp. They said, turn over the pieces. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. So, good group here. So you work on the borders, and then what do you look at as a reference point to kind of figure out? The box top shows you this is what it should look like when you're finished. So I'm going to kind of show you what sales school is going to be like, all the pieces of it, and what it'll look like when you're done, okay? So here's my visual representation, and it starts to come together, and then here's Thursday. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that was a test. If you can cheer for my clip art, then I think we're in a good place. All right, excellent, no more clip art. All right, let's talk about what we're going to learn. How to motivate yourself. We're going to talk a lot about motivation. Now, how many of you actually did do either music or sports in high school or now? Okay, most of you? Almost all. Okay, what you learned in sports or music or any activity that you had will help you in this. In sports, I remember when I was a little kid swimming, the coach had literally sprayed affirmations and self-talk on our kickboards. So when I was like 9, I was reading, "Winners never quit." I was just kicking along, and I was reading. So everything that you learned from what you've done in the past will come together and help you here. So we're going to talk a lot about motivation. We're also going to talk about how to make good first impressions. So Dan is going to spend 3 days, he's covering the approach, what to do at that door over there. So he's going to be basically sharing how to make that good first impression. And we've also got some extra videos to show you on how to connect with people in 90 seconds or less. Would that be a good skill? Yeah, even beyond selling books. All right, how to run a business. Tuesday and Wednesday, we're going to be covering business management, how to run a business. And we're going to assume you know nothing about running a business. Has anybody run a business before? A couple of you? Good. Well, I knew nothing about this when I got here. So, I mean, like Dan said, I was an English major. I had a lifeguarding minor. And thank you. I'll be here all week. Thank you. Thank you. Good night. Yeah, I just didn't know much about business, so it was nice that they actually taught me all the things that I needed to know. Next, how to stay on schedule. How to stay on schedule. Who's heard that term? Schedule from your manager? Okay. Are there any Brits here yet? I should probably say schedule for them. Have you stay on schedule. But anyway, I'll say schedule. This is so important to what we're going to do this summer. If you get on a good, solid schedule, you will win this summer. So more on that later. We're going to talk about how to gain rapport quickly. A little bit later this morning, we'll be talking about the introduction and sharing how to make that good human connection. Also, how to interpret rejection. How to interpret rejection. Now, you technically will not experience rejection this summer, technically. What you will experience is refusal, okay? Mrs. Jones doesn't know you personally, so she's not rejecting you. She's basically refusing your product or your service or what you represent, right? I mean, rejection really would be more like if you went home at the end of the summer and there was a note on the door of an empty house from your mom that said, "Dear Sarah, don't try to find us, we've moved." See? Now that's straight up rejection. Your mom doesn't like you, all right? She knows you and she doesn't want to be with you. So what you will experience this summer is really refusal, although it will kind of feel like rejection. So we'll work on that. Okay, how to have a great headquarters. Thursday, we're going to talk about how to be a good roommate, how to get settled into your abode this summer, and even a little bit on how to find a place if you need it. How to handle dogs is also Thursday. Dogology. We've got a special session on how to work with the 6 different types of dog genre, from the basic yard dog here in America to the 2 subphyla of really bad dogs and how to deal with them. So don't even need to worry about that. We'll cover it Thursday. Yeah, there's some dogs. Okay, what else? How to learn rapidly, study effectively. We're going to be doing that this week. And we have now implemented our classical music section. If you're hearing classical music, it's not like we're picking up an FM radio station nearby. We will be using that. Who studies the classical music? Yeah, that's smart. So much more effective for your brain to absorb information if you listen to light classical music in the background rather than Skrillex or Deadmau5 or whatever. I mean, that's just a little bit hard on the brain, So we're going to be kind of piping that in. If you don't, just let it go. It's normal. So I'm going to be covering a lot of this stuff this week. How to regain perspective when you've lost it. Yeah? You think that might happen this summer once or twice? Yes. So we're going to just share stories about how to bounce back, how to use mental tools to help you snap back into the right state you need to be in to be effective. All right. So when people come, we had a bunch of guests here last week, and they came just to observe sales school. And when we have salespeople in to watch what we do, what they tell us is that what we're training you to do in terms of a technical sales is very much like what they do. Now, we do something a little different than what they do, which I'll explain in a minute. But technically, let me show you what we're going to work through this week, starting in just a few minutes. You've got the cycle of selling there in your manual at the bottom of the page. Who's already kind of gone through this with their student manager a little bit on campus? So you know what the parts are? Okay. Well, let's kind of go through these really rapidly. Pre-approach is what occurs prior to the approach, hence the prefix pre. Is everybody with me so far? Okay, so we're going to practice that a little bit later this morning. Then after pre-approach comes the approach. We'll deal with that. That's basically what you say at the door. Once you enter the door or sit on the porch, you begin your introduction. And your introduction is just to create a buying atmosphere. Has anybody already started to memorize part of this in the intro? Good. Excellent. Advanced group. And that kind of blends into the demonstration, right? And then after the demo comes the close. We're going to talk about this tomorrow and on Wednesday. And that's gently helping Mrs. Jones make a decision without any pressure, but just kind of help move her along, right? So once you've done that, we've also got registration and answering objections. We'll cover that in some detail. Objections pop out when you're doing the close because you're helping her make a decision. And finally, if you get a yes, only if you get a yes, do you proceed to this step, okay? Remember, keep this in mind. If someone says, well, I don't think so, you can't just say, cash collection, I'm hungry. Can't do that. It's not effective. So that is the cycle. And most of you are like, yeah, we've heard this. Boring, not applicable. Well, this applies in almost everything you do when you're selling. Like if you've ever sold a professor on postponing a research paper, is anybody? People are like, yeah, I'm always procrastinating, yeah. You do this to some extent, right? Or if you're a guy and you're asking a girl out, when I did this many moons ago, I didn't know this, but I was using the cycle of selling. It's like first I would get pre-approach on the said female I wanted to talk to. So I was like, hey, do you know who that is over there? Alexis? Awesome. Do you know what she studies? Mind if I jot that down? So I'm like, okay. Where's she from? Really? All right, awesome. So I get a little pre-approach. Is she going out with anybody? All right, that's good to know. Thank you. Jot that down. So pre-approach. And then the approach, I was like, hey, how's it going, Alexis? My name's Lee. I'm the one talking and trying to go out with all the women here on campus. And I was over with Sheila and Susan and Betty. I just thought I'd stop by. Do you have a place we could sit down? So, see? Approach. You didn't even, some of you guys, you haven't ever been out on a date, and now you know why. You didn't do it the right way. And then introduction, if you like me, fine. If not, that's fine too, Intro, demo, here's what everyone likes about the way I'm going out with them. I don't know. It breaks down a little bit. Guys, you're very familiar with objections, right? It's like, I've got to wash my hair again. In fact, for the next 22 Fridays in a row, oh my gosh, I'm so busy. Right? So we're going to teach you how to answer objections, and I don't even want to deal with cash collection. So anyway, that's the cycle. But now some of you are interested in sales school. You're like, yeah, I'm going to take notes now, because there's some application. You guys are like, all right, a date. Okay. Now, we teach pretty much what all sales companies teach in terms of that. The way we do it a little differently, though, is emotionally, we're going to really try to prepare you for what you're going to experience in the next few weeks. So let me tell you how you're going to feel this week. This week, probably by tomorrow, you're going to feel information overload, where your brain is full. Has anybody had a little of that already? I mean, literally, on Wednesday afternoon of sales school, I remember staring at one paragraph for like an hour, just like, It just was not going in. It drove me crazy. And that's totally normal. To expect some information overload. Very, very typical. So if your brain gets full, don't worry. Take a little break. Move forward. All right? The other thing you might feel this week, since we've got recruited lots of sharp people, some of whom can learn quickly, you may feel like you're behind people, like feeling behind. That's not a bad thing if you're looking around and other people know more than you do, because that gives you that little bit of adrenaline to keep studying, right? Okay? Once you're ahead of everyone and you feel like, oh yeah, I'm really overconfident. Overconfidence is the feeling you get right before you find out differently. So it's okay to be behind because it keeps you working, right? Here's another emotion. You'll feel fatigue. Has anybody achieved this? All right. You're on a totally different schedule usually than the one you're back at school or during finals week. So, very normal to feel tired. I'm going to encourage you to sleep at night. Be sure to sleep. More on that in a few minutes. Thursday night, though, you will feel confident, you'll feel ready to go, and you will know enough that you won't want to stay longer to learn more. Okay? And you can look like her. Look at how she's so, yay. Okay. We'll talk about body language this week, too. All right, now you can put your notes away just for a minute. I'm going to have you discuss 3 questions with a neighbor. Sales school is not going to be real super lecture. It's going to be more like do something, listen to something, write something down, do something, listen. So we're going to participate, if you would. Here are 3 questions I want you to talk about with somebody sitting near you, right? And this is to establish relevance. The reason I want to go through this real quick is because how many of you have taken a course that was so esoteric and so out there and so abstract that you didn't feel like this connected to anything in real life? Have you had a course like that? Yeah. I mean, I took spherical trigonometry when I was in astronomy. I took the next course when I was in astronomy was plasma physics, stellar plasma physics. I'm like, see ya. And I switched to English, which was a big move, good move. But some of those courses, even as an English major, one of the courses I took was called Intro to Generative Transformational Syntax. We would call that sentence diagramming. Remember that? So when I'm taking that class, I'm like, what does this have to do with my success in life? You've had a course like this, yeah? So I want to make sure that we establish relevance to what you're doing now this week into your career later. So here are the questions I want you to talk about this. What's in this for me? That's one quick topic. Second topic, how will learning this information help me later in my career, even if I'm not a business major? How will this help me? And finally, what do I already know about this course? It really helps to figure out your brain to notice, here's what I already know, here's what I got to fill in on the blanks, right? So I'm going to do this. I'm going to give you about 90 seconds. Get with a neighbor, talk through those quickly, compare notes, and then we'll come back, all right? Good luck. Welcome back. Time's up. Look at that. Okay, so how many of you compared notes and you found someone that had a different purpose for their summer than you? Anybody have that? Okay, it's good to compare notes. Lots of synergy in the room. So let's do this. Let's take a test. Oh, what? No, this isn't hard. If you'll turn to page 34, I believe I have a 2-page assessment. It's not really a test. Called Which Are Your Preferred Senses? Now, before you start filling this out, let me explain what this is about. All of us take in information differently. Some of us are visual learners, so you respond to color and video and seeing things. How many people just kind of instinctively feel like you can picture the sales talk in your head a little bit? Like what? Okay, you'll notice the sales talk's got different colored sections. That's for visual learners. Some of you are auditory learners. You learn by listening and talking and discussing and hearing, right? So we're going to figure out if we've got some auditory learners in the crowd. Some of you take in information physically, like you're a kinesthetic learner, so you literally like hands-on learning. You like to handle the information. You're the type of person that doesn't really read the directions when they're building a model or whatever. You just start fitting things together. That's the sound you make too. See? So, and most of us are a combination of the three. But here's what I want you to do. In the left-hand column on page 32, you'll see a list of descriptors and then 3 columns out to the right. So read the situation and then look to the right and figure out, put a circle around or check the example that sounds or looks or feels most like you. And then we'll total the scores on the next page, okay? So I'll give you a couple minutes to work on this and we'll come back. Okay. If you need to keep working, just finish up. Who was a combination of all 3? You had something in each column. Most people? Okay. Was anybody 1 all the way down, like all physical or all auditory? Yeah. Okay. Good. Everybody was a combo. Who was mostly visual? Mostly visual learners. All right. Look around. There's about maybe a third of the group, so well done. How about auditory? You like listening and hearing. Okay. Maybe a few more. And then physical learners. Hands-on. You're probably good at sports. You guys with your hands up, you're the kids that the teacher was always yelling at in school to hold still. Because you're like, because you learn with your body. But she's like, hold still. And you're like, but I learn with my body. She goes, I don't understand that, hold still. So if you need to move during sales school or stand up, that's fine. And this afternoon, I want you to move around as you learn, right? We'll talk about that. Let's take this information and apply it. If you flip back a couple pages, let's fill in some blanks and take this info, now that we know what we are, and apply it. So we'll start with physical learners. Now, I only scored a 2 on the physical range, so I was mostly visual. Don't just skip this part. You can actually use, the more ways you have to make connections on the material, your brain has all these neural pathways. If you've got physical connections, auditory connections, visual connections, it goes in a lot better. So let's jump in. Here's one thing if you're a physical learner that will really help you. Get index cards, 3x5 cards, and take your sales talk and literally write out the sales talk, one paragraph per card. Now that is tedious and it takes a while, but the act of writing out the information you're trying to memorize, it imprints at once on your brain. Then you take all those cards and you mess them up and you go, okay, what's the first thing I say in my introduction? This. What's the second thing? This. This. And you start to build your talk that way. You'll learn it faster with the connections if you're a physical learner. Also, in the afternoon, I want you to move around. Don't do like I did. I went to the hotel and they had like a 2-hour study time. So I just went like I would at college and I said, I'm just going to go lie down and study this. Well, how long did that last with my reading on my back? It's like 2 minutes later. So just put it on my forehead through osmosis. I'm going to absorb this. Doesn't work. So get up and move around. And we want you to use your sample books. Practice with your samples, okay? Because that'll give you a visual cue if you turn enough pages of what's coming next if you forget what to say. So practice with your sample books, right? Here's what I don't want to see this afternoon when we're working at the company. Normally I see people walking around with a crumpled up sales talk sheet and they're just like this. Okay, that is not interesting to your brain at all. So I'm suggesting some creative techniques. Let me show you. For auditory learners, I would suggest you practice the sales presentation out loud using different voices. Huh? Like lapse into, I don't know, pick your favorite actress or cartoon character, and if you're stuck on a paragraph, read it out loud 5 times in a weird voice. We're used to this at the company, so if someone bursts into whatever, we're like, oh yeah, okay, auditory. So your brain only notices things that are different or funny. So I would recommend that you try this. I'm not saying hear different voices in your head. That would be, well, come see me if you have problems with that. But use a different voice and you'll memorize it so much faster, right? Also, auditory people, if you'll explain what you've learned to someone else at the end of the day, or what's great, you'll sit down with the student manager and show what you know, it goes in so much better. Really important. Or if you got like an iPhone and you can record your own voice doing the sales talk, and at night as you're going to sleep, pop in your earbuds, go to sleep hearing yourself doing the sales talk that you've read into the mic. Does that make sense? Really good way for auditory learners, right? Now let's look at visual people. Visual people really like these really nice colors and big screen, and you're like, oh, look, colors, yay, you get all excited. So I want you to draw a lot in your manual. I want you to create, how many of you have done a mind map before? A mind map. So it's a different way of taking notes than just the sequential stuff that we're doing here in the book. You might get out a blank piece of paper, and with different colored pens, you might draw a sales school and then put Monday, and then branch off pre-approach. And I learned about the approach, and then from those branches, it's kind of an organic way of taking notes. So you might practice that. But once you see that, you'll go, okay, that's a good summary of what I learned, but you can see it, right? Also, highlight key points. If you have different colored highlighters, I would recommend you, for visual people, you get different colors involved with your learning. If there's a paragraph you're not getting, take a purple highlighter or something, a baby aspirin orange, and highlight the whole paragraph, because you'll be able to see those in your head. You're like, okay, that's the orange paragraph next. That'll go so much better if you're a visual learner, right? And then stop and create a mental picture of what you're learning. If you'll stop and kind of picture, again, success, getting it down, that will help you, especially if you're a visual person, right? Okay, so before we go to break, let me just share a couple hints with you really quick. This week, I give you authorization to be creative with your memorizing. Don't just mumble your way to success. Be creative, engage your brain. Also, we're going to have lots of little reviews this week. I want you to review at bedtime, look through your sales talk one time, maybe look at your sales school notes. It will go in so much better if in a state of calm focus you review, lots of little reviews. It stays in better. Now here's something I really want to stress. Tonight, you got to get some rest. This is the opposite of what we do when we're under pressure at school, right? Because if there's a big test or something we got to know, what do most people do? There's like, all-nighter, here we go, more coffee, and they're just slamming in caffeine. And then what happens the next day? you kind of crash and burn. And I can always see people that were up till like 1 in the morning trying to learn another paragraph because they're like, this is so awesome. This is really good. You know, they're just out of it. So I want you to be in bed at the very, very latest at 11 o'clock. Head on the pillow, 11 o'clock. Because here's why. When I was in sales school, I was so angry because I was so tired all day, and then I would get to bed in the hotel, I'm like, oh, finally, sleep. And then my eyes would click open, and I'd look at the clock, and like 15 minutes would go by. I'm like, come on, sleep. You know, did any of you kind of like take a while to shut down? Our brains in sales school are like Windows 95. You remember that old operating system? Horrible to shut down. Are you sure you want to shut down? Yes, I want to shut down. You're really sure? Yes, I want to close this. So sometimes it takes us 30 minutes to wind down, because here's what your brain's doing. This is why sleep's so important. When you're getting ready to go to sleep and you're sleeping, your brain is filling in all the blanks and moving the paragraphs around in your head. They're going, this goes here, this goes here, and it's sorting all that. So if you get sleep, then the next day you wake up and some things will connect better, all right? So got to get to bed tonight. If you get in bed before 11, that's bonus. So if your student manager wants to go for a walk and have a PC, say, sorry, got to sleep, good night. All right, breakfast time, another quick review, and you'll do great at this. All right? You ready to have a good week? We will have a good week. Okay.